Suspenders Unbuttoned podcast. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Julie.
Join us for unbuttoned and unedited conversations.
We're good. Hi, welcome back to Suspenders Unbuttoned podcast. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Julie. And we're excited to welcome Joy Gregory. Welcome, Joy.
Hello.
Hi, it's so fun to meet you. We've been, hearing your name around. So wonderful to put a face to the name. Thanks.
Great to be here. Great to meet you both as well.
It's funny, when we first watched this episode, you wrote When Autumn Leaves Begin to Fall.
Right.
It was not a surprise that it was a new writer.
Yeah. Well, my immediate reaction to that is, uh-oh.
No, it was a good way.
Yeah, I know. This is my 24th season of television, and I learned right away early in my career, your job is to sound like someone else.
Not always. I think as a viewer, we want to see a fresh point of view too.
Yeah.
It was fun to just kind of have a new voice, like a new perspective in a really subtle way. But I think, we've talked to so many writers and directors and the actors, and we're kind of get to know their styles. So it was something we could recognize. But anyway, tell us, how did you get involved in When Calls the Heart? I mean, like you said, you've been in TV for a very long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
After the strike, there was a big dual strike here in the U.S. between the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild. I was marching on the picket line with, strikes are sort of a tour of your past jobs. You meet with all these people you've worked with before. And I hadn't worked, and so I have to say I was so busy and so delighted. I got back to theater. I wrote and directed a short film, but I was delighted to get a call for my first job after the strike ended from Lindsay Sturman. Lindsay and I had worked together on a show created by Barbara Hall on CBS in the early aughts called Joan of Arcadia.
Yeah.
And we both really adore and admire Barbara and feel like she inspired our careers in a lot of ways. And we loved working together on it. And I knew that Lindsay had been running the show this was her third season. Season 12 was her third season. I knew she had done it 2 seasons before, and that, it had gotten back to me through a friend that she was very happy writing this show over on Hallmark. So I remember where I was visiting my husband, who's a cinematographer. He was shooting a film in Oklahoma, and I was visiting the Woody Guthrie Museum in Tulsa, and Lindsay called and said, "Do you want to come join this show I'm on?" And I'd heard she was happy, and I felt like, oh my gosh, this is just my manna from heaven. I'm following my husband around to his job because I'm not working myself. And I felt very lucky that fell in my lap. And I learned that the show, they had been meeting for, I think, 5 weeks, maybe even 6 at that point. And she was adding another writer. This happens sometimes. You realize, we need another voice in the room, or you look at who's going to get scripts and realize we're going to need somebody to lighten the load a little bit. So she got approved for some extra budget to hire a writer, and she remembered our work together on Joan of Arcadia. So I was very happy and felt very lucky to join the season. And I had to play a lot of catch up really quickly. I did not have time in 4 days before I joined the staff to watch 11 episodes of When Calls the Heart. So I watched as much as I could of season 11, and then did what I often do when I join a show, if it's not in its first season, which is just shut your trap and listen for several days and pick up all the character names and how people like to talk about the stories. And I just did a crash course, but then I jumped in and started paddling and contributing stories, and was, it's always that shaky moment when you start pitching stories, like, is this what you guys are looking for? And I got a lot at first of, we did a version of that. And so I cycled through a lot of stories that had been done before, but found a way to be useful and was soon swimming and creating the season with everybody else.
Yes, because you came in season 12. There were 11 previous seasons. You literally did not have enough time to binge all of that. And so there is a lot of history there to walk through.
Yeah.
But when your episode came around, did you know that Melissa Gilbert would be playing Georgie?
No, actually, she came up later. You know, we were talking for the first few weeks of a writer's room. You talk about what's called season arcs, and it's just a summary of what you think you're going to do. And it's a roadmap, and sometimes you take detours off the roadmap. But I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look. Did we have Georgie McGill in our original season arcs? What I do know is that we were already writing scripts. So I know that we had approved the season arcs when word came in, hey, Melissa Gilbert, is available. So I remember now. We did have the character in place, and then her name came up. Wouldn't she be great?
Okay.
For Georgie McGill. And I remember that weekend looking up everything I could find of her recent work on Hallmark shows and movies, which I found on YouTube, and feeling like, oh, she's perfect. And it's such a perfect fit for the show, of course, because of her connection with Michael Landon Jr.'s dad. And, she's such a part of the tone of the show with her Little House on the Prairie, of course, history.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was quite a big deal to, announce that she would be a part of the show, even when they announced it to the hearties at the reunion that they have.
Yeah.
Was there any sort of pressure to write the episode that introduces her to the One Calls the Heart family?
Yeah. Mostly I remember the moment of sitting down to write, okay, this train car scene where they start talking in code about the love, the interest that they had, that they had never consummated back then, or even really acknowledged between each other. That's a fun scene to write. And I remember sitting down to write it thinking, wow, this is a big moment for Jack Wagner's character, Bill Avery, that we're going to find out, that he was with Nora, and all the time he also had this story that we never told you about in his past. And I love writing heartache. Breakup scenes are some of my favorites, or the first time you see a love after you've parted ways, and all that. It's just so churned up and painful, and characters expose themselves in raw, vulnerable ways. So I was really excited to explore that for this brand new character, Georgie, and this beloved longtime character, Bill Avery.
Yeah. What made you choose, like, they've known each other since they were in inspector school together? Like, you didn't make them have like a 5-year history. You made them have like a 30-year history.
Yeah. Well, I love how charged it is when you knew someone in your youth, and here you are as a mature adult later in life, and you're remembering who you used to be. That's so charged and romantic, and again, vulnerable. And I also loved, one of my favorite things about writing for this show is that it seems on the surface to be just a very sweet, family, soft, gentle show. But we are, by the way, creating this pantheon of incredibly strong women. And I loved bringing Georgie McGill to join that pantheon. And I loved reflecting well on Bill, that even as a young man, he supported Georgie. And though he was attracted to her, he did not objectify her. He just wanted her to shine. He saw that she was X-Ray McGill. She was better than all of them. She ran circles around them. He was never threatened. And he supported her. And that's part of what seduced her. So unpacking all of that, I thought, reflected really well on Bill, too.
Yeah. Right. that part wasn't a surprise to us as a long-time viewer, right?
Yeah, it fit his personality and what we've seen through 12 seasons. Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved saying, he was always that way. He's, even as a young man, that's who he was.
Now, you touched on this a little bit a second ago, but how do you come into this very established show with these very established characters? You don't have tons of time to, do the whole crash course before you start. So you talked about listening and really just trying to absorb, how the other writers talk about the characters. But how did you end up getting to know them?
I started out in theater as an actor, and you get to closing night of a play and you sort of stop and marvel, how did I memorize this whole thing? And it's a similar kind of trick with your brain. You just dive in, you submerge yourself in it, and there's always like a brainwave you get on when you're writing. I remember when sometimes you see the actor that you've been writing for all day, and I would always laugh and say, I feel like I've been sitting with you all day. And so you just open this portal in your brain and submerge yourself in it and sort of learn it like you learn a whole play or a musical. It just gets in your bones quickly. And it's scary at first. The first time you let the characters start speaking through you, you're not quite sure you're channeling them correctly. But as soon as you start getting positive feedback from Lindsay, who knows the show so well, and of course, I really relied on Beth, Derek, and Allie, who know the show so well. And once I got enough encouragement to know, okay, I'm okay, I'm doing all right, then you're off to the races and just fully inside these people. It's a delight.
It was fun with Georgie and Bill and their dynamic, because you rolled it right into the Mountie office, and Nathan's like ready to get going on the case, and then the next thing he knows it, he's third wheeling. That was a fun dynamic.
It was so fun. One of my favorite things that I discovered right away, Beth wrote the season premiere, so it was my first time reading, okay, here's how you write the show this season. And the first thing I noticed is, Beth gets Nathan. Wow. She taught me how to write that dry Canadian Mountie man, and that his humor is really subtle and dry as a bone. And Kevin is so good at it. So I got that modeled for me by the pro. I consider Beth the Nathan pro. And tried to, do my version of it in that scene of him like sort of watching this tennis match between Bill and Georgie and realizing, I'm not part of this, am I?
He was like, I'm missing something here.
I know. And Martin Wood, the director, staged it and shot it in such a fun way too. Yeah, it was really great.
Yeah, it's funny to hear you say how Beth is like the Nathan. She really gets Nathan. I'm curious if there's other characters that other writers just you feel like really get. Can you share that with us?
Absolutely. Lindsay was the Rosemary. Utterly channeled Rosemary. Every time she wrote her, she was just delightful, and that was really fun. I don't. One doesn't pop to mind for Allie. I'd be curious what she says. I feel like she just writes everybody well. Derek shared with me that he felt really close to Bill, that he knew how to write Bill. And I definitely saw that. Although he was great with the romance stories too. I don't mean to suggest that he was at all good. But yeah, I'd be curious to hear Allie say who she thinks hers is. I don't have an answer.
To ask.
Yeah.
That's fun. So dreams are something we've never seen before in all the years of One Calls the Heart. So can you kind of walk us through how that happened and how the dreams, came?
I have always loved pattern breaking episodes in any series, and I love them as a viewer too. One of my favorite formative episodes of TV as a kid, I grew up in the 70s, and I loved Norman Lear's shows, and All in the Family did an episode, and you'd think they did a couple of really interesting pattern breaking ones. They did one that was a Rashomon episode where you saw the same scene played from Edith's point of view and then Archie's point of view.
Okay.
And so I love things that play with form like that. And so I was excited to write one where we get to go inside dreams for the first time on the show, and let's find out what is Elizabeth in a feverish state dreaming about. And of course it was a thrill to let Elizabeth have kind of racy dreams in a way that we can't, nor should we, where Elizabeth and Nathan are in their relationship. It just wouldn't be appropriate to the show. But it opens up a whole new channel of what we can show and what we can indulge in if it's a feverish dream. And this was a pitch from Erin that I was told, like, she's been pitching this for the last few seasons. Can my character can never get drunk, but cold medicine, medication had opiates at this time.
For sure.
That feels like a safe way that we could see Elizabeth a little loopy.
Her medication misadventure was the most perfect choice for that.
And we had seen that happen with Bill a few seasons back as well. So, I think it made sense to the audience.
Right.
And,
yeah. And it allowed her to, she was probably not someone who was allowed to let her desire run free. Mm-hmm. And so we got to let her do that.
So the first dream is kind of fun in that it is a little bit very like time period, like kind of like the silent movies. It's a little campy.
Yeah.
But it's like so fun because it's so perfect. Like he shows up in the Mountie uniform besides, just to give you that same time period. Like tell us about making the choices for that first dream.
Yeah, we thought about melodramas of the late 19th century, early 20th century, and romance novels we wanted it to evoke, although we also get into the kind of more contemporary idea of sexy romance novels in the second dream.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of the sort of swooning heroine falling in the arms of her Mountie and declaring herself utterly at his disposal. And that was what inspired that one.
So in the shot during that one, there, he sets her on the sofa and it's a very Titanic look. Yeah. Was it written that way, or did they roll with it?
They brought some more of that.
It was like the rose on the couch. It was like, this is spectacular.
Yeah. Oh, I knew, especially since the idea came from Erin in the first place and she was hungry to do it. I knew, like, just type minimally here. Let them find it. It will be great.
That's amazing. And I love that in the midst of this big dream, there's like these little tiny moments of truth. Of course, we see some of that from set deck with different things from their past. But then Nathan says always, which is a term he's promised her even before they became a couple. So, and then when she wakes up, he says the same phrase again. So tell us about that choice to add, something so significant in.
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember conversation about what a significant word that was. So I might have accidentally stumbled into echoing something.
Yes.
That happens sometimes. You guys read more than this new writer was intended.
Yeah, it's something that Nathan has committed to her multiple times,
yeah,
including the episode she got engaged to Lucas. Right. He commits always to her. So
yes. You know what? I might just be forgetting that this was a period when I was still new to the show, and they were like, just have them say this, like, yes. So
because we got your back. The writers' room's got your back, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. All right, so the fact that this was Erin's idea is just makes it even better. But let's talk about the second dream too, because we go from this kind of, like you said, like the romantic sweeping her away, to Elizabeth watching Nathan chopping wood with, the water and the hair and the whole thing. So what was that? What was the intention for the contrast between the two?
Yeah. So this one we wanted to be a little hotter, a little steamier. And we went with like I don't know if you remember this reference, Fabio,
yes.
who was famously a model for those torrid
romance novels,
grocery store romance novel covers. And we wanted it to feel more like that. Like, let's just really go for her raw desire for this man. They had, Martin Wood had so much fun. I was cracking up the first time I saw the dailies. I was calling my husband over, like, look what I've made them do on this TV show.
Like, there's a water bucket, and
there were a lot of texts going back and forth between us when we first started.
We got wood chopping, Hallmark, hot guy icon to have them chopping wood, right?
Yeah.
But you upped it by adding the water bucket in.
Yeah, I know. We really went for it. There was more to that dream. I don't remember it now if the second part of the dream made it into the cut that you saw, where they end up like on the hay in the barn.
No.
Yeah. We did have to pull it back. It was just like, oh my God.
Tell us more.
We need the hay in the barn.
It kind of cut from he pulls his hair back, and then it cut to her walking backward toward a horse stall and falling back into hay. But then it outstayed its welcome, honestly.
I hope that makes it onto like
the
cut scene.
Yeah, definitely.
No, it was fun, and the set deck like made it super dreamy in the barn.
The wisteria hanging. I know, it was so feverish. I loved it. We did great.
Very Bridgerton.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So we had heard that Dream 3, Nathan's dream, wasn't originally there?
I think that's true, yes. And in a draft, I do remember that it wasn't added after we started shooting.
Yeah. Okay, it was added before that.
But it was like in one of the last drafts. It was a great idea someone had. I wish I could remember to give them credit, but somebody pitched like, what if there's a final dream and it turns out to be Nathan's? And we called it the Terrence Malick dream. Terrence Malick is, do you know this writer director? He does very kind of artsy auteur American feature films that often have like layered voiceover and long dream sequence. Things feel very dreamy. And this going through the laundry felt like a dreamy Terrence Malick kind of image. And we loved, of course, that it seemed like it was this ethereal, where is Elizabeth? I'm searching for her. And then becomes Scout licking his face.
But it's actually ended up being so beautiful. The shots were stunning.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, in the middle of that, there's a little line, there's no place I'd rather be, which is something that they've said to each other since season 7, I think.
Yeah, well, like between 6 and 7 in the Christmas movie, Yes.
Yeah. That one I did know was a callback. Yes.
Yeah, and they've said it back and forth multiple times.
Yeah. We just loved bringing it to this peak of romance and then undercutting it in a funny way for the end.
With Scout.
With Scout, yes.
It felt, like, it's like, you're going to get her cold. There's no way you're missing out on that.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, you saw that coming.
Yeah. Especially when she sneezed all over him right at the beginning. He's like, oh.
Yeah, he started gestating that cold virus just in that moment.
What else do you want to tell us about the dreams and, why kind of, other than it being Erin's idea and doing something different?
Yeah, the fun of every show that you're on is, what are the restrictions? The restrictions give you the fun of breaking them, the fun of finding how hot you can be within them. Yeah. I wrote for a short-lived CBS show that shouldn't have been on CBS called Swing Town. It was in like 2009 or something. And it was about swinging couples in the 1970s, but we were very restricted. And I remember we had a director who was so frustrated because she's like a pretty bold director. Her name's Jamie Babbitt, and she's done a lot of great stuff, and some of it, frankly, sexual. And she made this gesture, like the two couples who've been swinging with each other once, and they haven't done it since, they go camping together. And they are just finally unpacking, and they decide, like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. Maybe we could light a fire. And Molly Parker just goes like this, and you're like,
right.
So that was a lesson for me. Restrictions are good for us.
Right. How to bring within the restrictions.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's been fun to watch the push the walls. It's like we can tell we're pushing right up against the edge, and it's been kind of fun.
And that's why I think we cut the second half of the wood cutting dream, because like you don't want to push beyond the edges, like that. Then you're violating something. Right. Leave them wanting more, like a good lover.
It was a good cover, and it was a lot of fun. But in the middle of these dreams, they actually have this nice conversation that's a little back and forth with each other. And Nathan's taking care of Elizabeth, and she tells him about a teenage heartbreak and asks Nathan, who broke your heart? He besides you, that bird breakup doesn't sound so bad. Elizabeth answers that's one that was far worse, but it seems to have worked out. Yeah. So Sarah and I took it one way right away, but the fandom and all of our chats were all over. So
I can tell you what I meant.
Yes, that's what we'd love to hear.
Yeah, we just meant to refer to her traumatic breakup with Lucas, but it seems to have worked out because I ended up with the man I'm supposed to be with. Clearly, my time with Lucas had come to an end, and for all of the complex reasons that Allie gave it in that episode, that she just felt like she was forcing it, or it had reached its limit, but it was very painful. And yet she ended up with Nathan, and that feels to her in this moment more inevitable. And like things landed where they were supposed to for her.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Not to at all diminish the great love that she had with Lucas, because I think she was great with both of those men. I am not meaning to say that one was the inevitable, always right for her from the beginning, but things ended in a way that Elizabeth now feels is the happy ending for her, despite how painful it was getting there.
The journey is where it's supposed to be, like it's ending up. Yeah. So we also have in this episode, before we move on from that conversation, I think we all loved that Nathan threw out that little "besides you," because that really hasn't been addressed. So it was kind of fun to see it, even though it was a small moment, and then they both kind of just went past it because it's not a big deal anymore.
Right. I know.
I'm glad that was thrown in there or placed in there.
Yes. No, when I was watching season 9, when her choice was made, I was kind of hungry for like, when is he going to sort of get his licks in on like, and he would once in a while, like, well, I know you didn't choose me, but maybe now you're thinking you should have.
Some of mine are great, right? Mm-hmm. Right. The sassy in the street. Those were some great lines in that.
Right. Well, we always joke about
talk.
And then how in season 9 too, they're in the hospital. Nathan's in the hospital bed, but it's Elizabeth there with the heart card, and like
they go get her, like
go get his wife. Yeah.
By emergency contact, right?
Anyway, full circle, we're back. Back where we belong. But so we also have, of course, the dreams were kind of the big talk, but there's some other really lovely things happening in this episode too. We have Allie and Oliver's adventure, and then, they have this beautiful conversation in, I believe it was the barn over the cupcake, where, she shares that they share their stories, and their, that connection is really starting to form.
That's right. Yeah. That was the last line I wrote in the action line when he takes his half cupcake and hands it to her and says, it's nicer if you share.
Yeah.
And the last line I wrote was, a friendship is born. So that was exactly how I hoped they had played it, and what I wanted you guys to feel when you saw it.
Yeah.
It was they had a pretty big story, because like the way you connected them was not because they both like being outdoors or because they both want to go search for something. You connected them because they both have a parent who's not in their lives, and who's in jail.
Yes. I know. It's a painful thing to share. And I loved finding, when we were just talking it through in the room, that the thing she could give him is like, we're not like this polluted stream. Like, I know better than anyone that I bet you two walk around with the shadow. What if I'm as bad as my parent is?
Yeah.
And the fact that she could say, we are our own people, and it doesn't matter who our parents were, that's such a powerful thing for them to share. It really felt like, this friendship's going to be off to the races.
Right.
They find that point of connection.
Yeah. And until this time, Allie's only been able to talk to Nathan really about that. And of course he would understand, because his dad was also in jail. And so
I was going to say, there's one more level to this story.
Right. But when you are 17, you're not always wanting to talk to your parents about these things. So for her to have a peer that, they have a very similar background, and that's something real special.
Yeah.
That they can bond over.
I know. I'm really loving, we're so happy with Jacob Shumay and Jada's chemistry together on screen. Yes. They're so lovely, and I can't wait to tell more stories for those characters.
Yeah, those two on screen everyone is blown up.
Everybody loves Oliver. Yeah.
Yeah, they're special.
Yeah, that's really been great. In your episode, also, you get to introduce the whole idea of Angela going to the Schwartzman school.
Yes.
This is a lovely storyline for the Canfield family, and something that I think just, they have some specific things because of her blindness, but finding the right place for your child as they're transitioning into adulthood, this is a storyline people can relate to.
Oh yeah, I just went through it. My daughter is now a junior in college, and so very recently I went through all those that incredible roller coaster ride of senior year, where it feels like everything is on the line, and she's breaking away from me, and I'm not behaving perfectly about that all the time, and then feeling terrible. And yet I just want to support you and send you, but will you be okay? And am I secretly worried, but I don't want you to know I'm worried. I mean, there's so much, you go through so much. It's such a keen moment of parenting. And I was really eager to get into that and bring everything I had just lived through to Minnie and Angela.
Yeah, I have a freshman right now in high school. Now it's already on our minds, it's like these last couple of years, it's almost like
you can see it coming.
I know. Yeah, freshman year was when they started the all parent meetings about like, start your extracurriculars, and you could just feel like the pressure is building already.
Yeah, like real world conversations. Like, what do you want to do? What do you like to do? Yeah. I found the Canfield story extremely relatable. I also have children that have special needs. So I've got that hits home too, right? Just that extra layer of worry. But yeah, it's been a beautiful story to watch unfold. And I think a lot of people can relate to these stories of, these children growing. Yes. We also learned that Ava might not be on the up and up in this episode. So Ava has come in, like a storm, and provided some comedy. It's kind of leveled out some of the harder storylines. What can you tell us about writing for Ava?
Oh, I had already written for Tierra, who plays Ava. I wrote a proposed second season. It's something called a mini room, where you're writing something before a show goes into production, for what was maybe going to be a second season of Ride.
Ride, yes.
Yes. So I had spent a whole season doing that thing I told you about, where you feel like you're just visiting an actor all day, of like imagining her and writing her character, whose name was Missy.
Yeah.
So Missy was really different, though, from Ava. It was such a delight to see that Ava, because Missy was like this grounded, earnest, like rodeo girl who was really torn between her dead husband, but her dead husband's brother, and a forbidden desire, and has a career of her own. And here she is, this sort of like a little bit ditzy vaudeville goyle, who's got a secret, and what is she up to? Is she going to be another Jeanette Aucoin, who's got, something dastardly in her past, or is she just got herself in some hot water, and she's a bit of a survivor and a scrapper? So I loved playing the mystery of her and discovering that Tierra was bringing joy and fun to this silly character. Who's more than silly, but you can have some fun with her. It was just fun to find this new texture and a new person in the town.
Yeah. What was the intention of bringing in, this brand new character that kind of impacted characters?
We wanted to bring the 20s in. We wanted to bring someone who had urban, contemporary, early 20s, roaring 20s energy. And we didn't feel we could just make May suddenly more contemporary, certainly Amanda could have played that, but we thought, let's bring the 20s to Hope Valley and see what happens. Let her stir things up.
That's fun. And
because she did kind of push buttons.
Yeah.
She was pushing Elizabeth buttons at first, and then Rosemary's buttons.
Exactly.
White and Lee's, and
have a young, not threatening, but a little bit tweaking Rosemary kind of character come in and stir up trouble.
Right.
Yeah, I really did love the dynamic between Rosemary and Ava.
Yeah. That was fun to write.
Those little moments, especially at the beginning when she's like, who is this?
Yes.
Yeah. And then in contrast to that, we see Fiona coming in with a real dilemma. She's struggling with where to be and what to do. That was really written in a very contrasting way. So bringing that one to life.
Yeah, again, what I love about the show is that all of our women are sort of unapologetically powerful, but I really appreciated that Lindsay supported and indeed participated in creating this story for Kayla, Fiona, where we were honest about it was painful for Fiona to realize that she couldn't really make a difference if she wasn't wealthy or married or both. That she got a painful lesson in the reality of political effectiveness when she was working with the suffragettes and felt like, I'm not in the room where decisions are made.
Right.
And I have this proposal from this man. I've turned him down several times, but maybe I make a choice of convenience and I'll have more stability. We sort of backed off of dialoguing this specifically, but Lindsay and I always imagined that she was getting some family pressure. It was going to sort of get her parents off her back. She would be more financially stable. And what really motivated her is, I want to make a difference in the world. And I've seen the kind of women who get to, and I want to be one of them. And if it means marrying someone maybe I'm not over the moon in love with, well, I feel like there are more important things in life. And of course, what Kayla plays so beautifully on screen is she knows it's wrong. Her heart knows this is wrong. So it's a great dilemma for her.
Yeah, no, and it rolls off beautifully and ends up rolling into the future episodes. We saw 9 just yesterday, and how she's really struggling with that, and some beautiful scenes with May and Faith and Elizabeth as she works through all those things.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting, very contrasting to the Ava story.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, we brought these 2 young women back to town, and they played very almost opposing storylines. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I can't remember them actually having contact.
No, I don't think they do.
Well, once Fiona picked her up on the road.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think that's really it, except maybe they were
in
the balloon at the same time, but they didn't really interact.
Yeah.
Right.
When you've had a lot, this episode in particular had a lot of storylines, some new characters being brought in, and then, all these different things. When you have so many different kind of storylines, what special things do you need to consider when you're drafting these episodes?
Gosh, I will share with you. This one went through a lot of drafts because we just had too much story. And it was painful to barely be able to acknowledge Hickam and Fiona's history together. We had more written, we honored it, and then we just had to keep cutting. That was tough. The short answer is we wish we'd had 2 hours to tell the stories, because when you do fill a show with this many characters who are played by actors we cherish and want to serve, painful choices have to get made, because at some point there's this painful step. I don't know if this has come up in your many conversations about how we make the show, but this is a step in every TV show, not unique to When Calls the Heart, where the script, you've all been working on it and it's been vetted and it's got notes from the network and notes from the studio, and you did a 3rd draft, and now comes the script timing. So our script, is it the coordinator or the script supervisor? Script supervisor goes home, and they have a technique. I don't know how they do it. I think they all have their own version of it. And they sort of walk through the script and imagine how it's really going to play accurately. And you get the script timing. And the script timing on this episode came in really long.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was trying to work long distance I had decided to try to squeeze in 1 week with my daughter. We were invited to stay with friends in Italy. And I thought, I can do it. I'll do the job remotely, because our writer's room is remote all the time. Yeah. Canadians and Americans. And I was up until 3 a.m. on the lawn where the Wi-Fi signal was good at this house in the summer, with bugs crawling on me, going I have to cut another 5 pages out of the script. How do I do it? It was so painful. Yeah, I have a trauma memory of it.
Oh, no.
That's rough, but right, you have a limited amount of time, and you've got to bring that on down and get that in, because even we know that scenes get shot, but then they are not included too. It's just
you really want to try to avoid that, because that's expensive. It's expensive to pay everybody to shoot a scene that you cut, and it's painful for actors. Of course, they put their heart and soul in this work. So I do, as a producer, I try as hard as I can. Let's not shoot it if we don't think it's going to make the cut. Let's not shoot it.
Right.
Can you tease anything that you really wish would have made it in that you had to?
Well, definitely the more air and breathing of Fiona and Hickam, being together and reuniting as friends. I remember feeling awful about cutting that. I don't remember. It was mostly, and this is the worst, my least favorite version of cutting a script down is let's just cut everything down to announcing story points. And all of my, as a writer, I love writing I'm giving you half my sandwich and I'm saying you got egg salad again, the chit chat that has nothing to do with the story point, but shows you friends who you love hanging out with. Right. Yeah, it was all versions of stuff like that.
Right. And I can really see that with Fiona's story during this one, because she's really, really is friends with these people, and she's really in a struggling space. So that piece of friends and that struggling space. But Kayla brings that struggling space to screen so well. Like,
sure does. Wow.
Man.
I know no one can play smiling through tears the way Kayla can.
Yeah.
Just melts.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But that moment that Hickam sees Fiona it turned out really cute.
I know they made the most of that hug, but
Right.
It was cute.
Oh, I know. Here's another thing we had to cut. It was a story that I really worked hard on, of a moment that Fiona was working with it was a story of a triumph as a suffragette. Like I was talking to this man about why women should get the right to vote, and he wasn't agreeing with me. And then I flipped the story around and I said, I can't remember what I wrote. It was like, well, what if it was you, or what if it was your daughter? And I saw the light go off in his eyes, and it was great. See Fiona talking about what she was getting from this work. And honestly, that would have been a high value thing, because you would have had more of an understanding of why she was willing to compromise herself for this marriage, to have more of that. So there you go. That's a painful thing.
That because Fiona, we've come to know her to be just this force and
passionate,
and very strong. Yeah. Interesting.
Right.
Kill your
yes. So what about, like, as a writer and somebody who has so much experience, what do you think about the possibility for more stories for When Calls the Heart and Hope?
Oh my God, this show could go and go and go, as it already has. I remember watching shows like this as a kid. Little House on the Prairie being one of them, The Waltons being another one, where I just wanted to hang out with these people. Like, I didn't even need that much story. I just wanted to spend my hour with them. And we've created in Hope Valley such a gentle, lovely place that, because it doesn't need big stakes and big reversals and, oh my God, the new 1923 thing is happening. I will say, we're bringing some kind of healthcare advancements to the end of the season. That's really exciting. But for the most part, it doesn't rely on big plot moves. And therefore, you're just gently evolving relationships and showing people grow and grow older with each other and still loving each other and discovering something surprising and new, but just living their life. And when it's a show like that, you can go forever.
Yeah.
With that said, you brought in Ava, like, as a contemporary 1920s person, and certainly the Nathan and Elizabeth date and that whole party scene was so 1920s. That in some ways it left it just as, like you were talking about, this place that is growing, but these things really kind of gave a freshness to where they're at.
That's always the trick. And I've been having a lot of talks with the writers who've been on longer than I am, that the trick of this show, and it's the trick of every show that has more than one season, but particularly this one, this many seasons in, is to strike that delicate balance of moving things forward a little bit, finding some freshness, some exciting new situation, an exciting new pairing, getting characters together who've never really had a relationship, without moving too fast, without violating what we love and what we come to for the show for comfort.
As someone who's newer to the writing team on the show, and now you've had to, like, kind of learn all of these characters, is there any characters you think haven't been together that should maybe have some?
Yeah, I was just thinking of a pairing. Joseph and Faith. We were thinking, the spiritual versus science. Some kind of
healing.
That feels like a pairing that could be fruitful. I feel like Minnie with lots of people. I can't wait to dive more into Minnie. Almost everybody with Minnie could have, like, some more interesting, substantial conversation that would be surprising and new, I bet.
Yeah.
Those are some
So we had two actors on recently, and one of them gave somebody, and then the next day we had the other one, and they gave that person. So Jada said she'd like Allie to have scenes with Rosemary, like she could be her mini reporter or her mini investigator. And then Pascal came on, and she's like, "Oh, I'd love to do scenes with Jada, Allie, and Rosemary together. Could be a power, like a lot of fun."
That's great. Yeah.
They were 1 day apart, and
they're both daughters of a Mountie, so they have like this connection they might not know about yet. So
that's fun.
Well, I think they do know, but like it could be explored that they both, as daughters of Mountie, and how that impacts.
I've always assumed Allie doesn't know that Rosemary.
That could be a surprise to her. I would believe that.
Yeah,
it's never been talked about, I don't think.
It would be fun. Anyways, when they both said that, we're like, yeah, no, that actually needs to happen.
Yeah. Anyway, that's our pitch.
Thank you. I love it. Yep.
And Pascal and Jada would also like to pitch that.
Great. So good.
Did you have a favorite storyline this season?
Yeah. I really loved writing Allie and Oliver. I partly because, there's so much to discover about Oliver. He's new, and every time you turn over a card, it can be a surprise and kind of heartbreaking or exciting and funny. I love writing Hickam and May because the big surprise for me when I became a TV writer is that the lead, you would think everyone is so hungry to write the lead characters because they're the lead and they get to do the most. And sometimes it can be the most fun to write the silly little C story. I think I must be a frustrated comedy writer. I just always look forward to those. And it's, it's more work to write the lead story. You got to honor their emotional state and dig into difficult moments and think through like an investigation beat. And when you write the C stories like Hickam, Hickam and May, we had a story that we had to drop in that painful script that I had to cut on the lawn in Tuscany. It was Hickam and May end up agreeing without consulting each other to babysit 3 different kids in the town.
Okay.
And
that's where all the kids are. Okay.
Yes. And they are just running themselves ragged. And Hickam makes the utter tactical error of asking each individual kid, what do you want for dinner? Instead of we're making spaghetti. So he ends up having to running himself ragged, making 3 separate dinners. And they're just exhausted at the end. And they say, I don't want to have kids. And May says, I don't either. And it lands in a sweet, real way where they say, I think that's okay. Right. And they sort of realize they're on the same page and they're very lovely and close after it. But we had a lot of hijinks along the way. Those are fun to write.
That's a cute story, but not enough minutes.
Maybe it'll find its way in the future.
Right. And, talking about the C storyline, it was fun even just in episode 9 when Lucas and Edie are having like this very serious kind of a conversation, date-ish sort of moment. And then here come Mike and May, and it's just like this little bit of levity.
Oh God, that was so fun.
Yeah, so it's fun to watch.
I did not write that, but I remember laughing out loud when I was reading it. Yeah, and it played really well.
Fun.
Right. Yeah.
So we're towards the end of the season now. Do you have any little Easter eggs that you could tease the fandom with for the last 3 episodes?
Well, it's going to be emotional. And I suppose I already gave you one when I said healthcare advancements might be part of it. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm people kind of know it's going to be emotional. The actors gave a little bit of that when they were in Kansas City, and so and during their press tours. So we'll look forward to that. Yeah, we'd like to learn a little bit more about you. You have this extensive background in TV series, both writing and producing. How did you kind of get there? Like, did you just be like, I'm going to be a writer and producer?
Well, I started out in theater. I was an actor. I went to Northwestern and studied acting, and then I founded a theater company in Chicago with 6 other members of my acting class. And it's called the Looking Glass Theater, and it's still alive in Chicago. We do a lot of original work, a lot of literary adaptation. And I started writing plays for them. And then I started coming up on my 30th birthday, and I looked around, and this is the reality, unfortunately, of being in the arts in the United States. I looked around and realized the only people in my in this company who've bought a home and who have financial security had family money, and I did not. So I thought, this is a grind. I'm really poor, and I can't live like this anymore. Like, I'm going to live like a post-college kid for the rest of my life. So I went to graduate school, and I used grad school as a way to relocate to the West Coast. I went to California Institute of the Arts and got an MFA in critical studies, which was a sort of wide open philosophy degree where you could work on whatever writing you wanted. And I wrote a play, but I also connected with a group of recently graduated film students, and we just met in everybody's living room once a month. And one of them said, "Oh, I really love your plays. I can't seem to finish a TV script. Will you be my writing partner? And let's see what happens." So we wrote in her living room a Felicity episode and a West Wing episode. And then we got a job. Then we got a meeting with J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves on Felicity. And then they hired us.
Yes.
Not little shows. Yeah.
Lightning struck as it never had in my acting career. Lightning was not striking for me as an actor, and it really struck as a writer. So I felt like, well, this is clearly what I got to do next. And there were some bumps in the road after that. I lost my writing partner. She decided TV writing wasn't for her, and she left after Felicity. And then my agent dropped me because he was like, "Well, I don't know if you're the talented half or not." So
okay, well, thanks.
I basically started over, and I wrote a very personal pilot that got me hired on Joan of Arcadia, and then I was off to the races as a solo writer.
Wow,
amazing!
That is a journey. Wow. Do you have a favorite episode of any show that you've ever written?
Oh yeah. There was one, several of the episodes I got to write on Madam Secretary were my favorites in my career. Madam Secretary, also created by Barbara Hall.
Yeah.
And I wrote one where Madam Secretary was being targeted by a conservative senator who was looking to demonize her. And this was during the rise of that kind of politics, the shift toward that kind of politics in my country, which I found really disturbing. And I had her husband, who's a religion professor. I had them sitting on the floor eating pizza out of a box, looking at a line of paintings of presidents. And the title of the script was Ships and Countries. And she said, like, why did this senator said to me, you're a threat to this country, and I will not let you be a threat to her. And why is he comfortable with the country being called a woman, but not a leader? And he said, well, I think we call ships and countries female because we're comfortable with the abstract idea of these things that bear us forward. But we're really vulnerable to a mother. A mother, like, it has so much power over us. And I think some people reject it in the reality of a woman in charge, but they can handle it in the abstract. And I was like, dang, I get to say this on network television. So that was a great moment for me.
Right?
Well, that's a cool story.
Right? Okay. If you So you've written for these years. Do you prefer like series, or do you prefer theater, or what do you prefer?
Well, series, my heart's in series. I keep trying to write plays, and it's hard for me to get produced right now. And theater's in a period of just really wanting new voices, necessarily, but if I'm not working with Looking Glass, I'm kind of not working as a playwright right now, or I'm doing things of my own plays. So series is where the work is, and it's where my heart is. I love telling ongoing stories for people in their living rooms. I have often thought that if I start a writer's room, the first thing I'll do is have everybody close their eyes and think about someone who needs this show that we're about to spend every day talking about, and take a moment and write down who they are, why they come to the show, what they do in their life, something surprising about them, give them a name, tell me their age and who they watch the show with. And then have us all share it, because like that's who it's for. I love creating pleasure and comfort for people at home. Like it just feels like the greatest way to spend my days.
And I think you just told us you love writing connection. I think
Yeah.
that's what you really just said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who are we connecting with?
Right.
Yeah. With all this experience you have in all these different series, how has it been working with When Calls the Heart in the fandom? Because we all know the fandom is maybe different than other series.
Yeah. This is by far the most engaged fan base I've ever had the honor of working with and for. And in the past, I have looked online at comments that people have made about shows, but felt like that's a really limited sampling of the kind of people who engage online. That's not necessarily indicative of our general viewership. So I'm going to take this with a grain of salt, but sometimes I engage with it. No, I mean, I never responded to anyone, but this today is my first face-to-face with the hearties. But I've been hearing about you guys nonstop since I joined the show, that the hearties are an incredible asset and part of the life of the show. And I'm really thrilled to make my first encounter. Thank you.
I think the fans will love meeting
your first encounter.
They're going to love meeting you and hearing your point of view and seeing your face too. They're going to enjoy seeing that for sure.
Yeah. And, as somebody, Julie and I are both long-time fans. I've been watching this show. I had babies while watching this show and held them while so I think everybody has this show for some reason really brings that connection. Everybody has a reason, right? Everybody has a moment how they connected to the show and why they continue to watch it. And then there's this added community to it, which just like ups it. Yeah,
it really does amplify the themes of the show. I mean, the first thing Lindsay told me is that the hearties have like sent gifts to each other in times of loss and in times of celebration, and like, wow, that's an authentic community coming from this imagined one that we all live with together.
Right. People know each other, have connected over literally get together. And so, it's an interesting way to connect. And so I just love the way you talked about who are you writing for and making those connections that way.
Yeah.
And people have connected the other ways. Should we play our little game?
Let's play our game. Yeah. It's a favorites game. So we'll just ask you a few questions and you can tell us your favorite or multiple. Do you have a favorite rom-com?
I just watched My Old Ass, and it's a really beautiful film. It seems like it's a silly stoner movie. The premise is a 17-year-old girl who's having her last summer before she goes to college, takes mushrooms, and Aubrey Plaza shows up next to her, and Aubrey Plaza says, "I'm you" at age 39. And she's talking to her older self as she's experiencing this last summer before growing up. And there's a love story involved, and it is fantastic. But a more traditional one, I guess Almost Famous isn't a classic rom-com, but it's one of my most favorite movies. I think it's incredibly romantic, but it's about love of music as much as it's about love of a lover.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Where do we find My Old Ass?
It is. I think I watched it on Amazon.
On Amazon. Perfect.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's on Amazon.
Okay.
Right.
I haven't seen that pop up, so I'll have to find it.
That's fun. Do you have a TV series outside of Wind Calls Heart that you're currently watching or binging?
White Lotus season 3, baby.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of White Lotus, man.
I have not seen the new season yet. I'll have to get on that. What about a favorite food?
Oh gosh, I love pasta. I'm a simple, basic girl. Like I tucked into a bowl of cacio e pepe last night and ate every scrap of it.
Delicious.
Are you? Do you like to make it yourself, or do you like to go out for it?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. Yeah. It's an easy one to get right at home.
Right.
You can make it delicious. I make a good carbonara.
That sounds delicious.
It is
delicious. So when you're not busy and working lots and lots of hours, do you have a hobby or something that you like to do?
Yeah, I love to play music with my friends. I was in a rock band in the mid-90s in Chicago, and I've stayed in touch with several people who were in that scene with me in the Chicago indie rock scene of the 90s. And we have been getting together at one of the members' homes in Brooklyn every 2 or 3 months. And we're working up a set of 10 songs. I'm playing guitar again. I sing, I write songs, and it's my joy.
I love that. Love that.
Right. Gosh, you've got a lot of talent in there. Singing, dancing, writing, acting. Amazing. You fit in with the cast.
I was an artsy kid, theater kid. Yes.
We both have one of those at home.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what are you listening to, or do you have a favorite musician or band or album?
Yeah, Fiona Apple is just popping right into my head right away. I've always loved kind of the girls who would probably be off-putting if you spent time with them, from Tori Amos to Roan Chapel, but I cherish those large girls who are a challenge. I just love them and their music.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite song by her?
By Fiona Apple?
Yeah.
Every Night. I love that one. Oh God, there's one about I opened my eyes while I was kissing you once, more than once. Parting Gift.
Parting Gift.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a killer.
Great. Always love a good music recommendation.
Yeah.
I know, we write them down. We write all these down. Joy, what do you want to tell everybody about maybe about season 12, like how you felt about it, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, it's interesting. I hope that fans feel we struck a good balance of incident, but care and healing. Lindsay was so careful about offering healing at the end of what's going to be some intense episodes coming up. And I hope you feel the warmth of the hug that we want to end with. I'm really looking forward to hopefully telling more stories with these folks. What else do I want to say about season 12? I just loved finding the comedy in it. That was the delightful discovery for me, was that the show can be quite fun and funny, even as we're going. The characters necessarily go through things together.
It's a fun balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like the balance has been really nice this season.
Great.
We're getting more comedy, but it's not like taking over.
Yeah. You don't ever want to put your foot on the gas too hard.
Right. Yeah, no, it's very well done. Where can people follow you on social media?
I keep my accounts private.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. We will do that. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us, Joy. And people are going to love getting to know you.
Oh, what a pleasure getting to know you both, Julie and Sarah. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. We hope you come back sometime and hang on for 1 second and we'll end the recording.
Okay.
And thank you everybody for watching. And thank you again, Joy, for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.